Welcome back to Coaches Exploring the Untethered Soul. And today we're looking at Chapter 8, Let Go Now or Fall. And this chapter starts with discussing fear, which I found quite interesting and relatable. I'll just read the first thing I highlighted. It said, change can be viewed as either exciting or frightening. If you have a lot of fear, you won't like change. You'll try to create a world around you that is predictable, controllable, and definable. Fear doesn't want to feel itself. It's actually afraid of itself. I know as soon as I read that, I was thinking about all the times and areas in my life where things are difficult or don't go well, or where I struggle. And I totally could just, if I boil down, like on the surface, I might call it one thing. But if I whittle it down or reduce it down, it always comes down to fear. At least so far, every example I've thought of. So I thought that this was very poignant. And for a long time, I lived my life like thinking it was like a chess match. I need to be thinking 8 or 10 moves ahead and have all the options pre-thought out so that when, scenario A happens, I'm ready for scenario A. And if scenario B happens, I'm also ready for that. And that was like really relatable to this trying to control, make things predictable, manageable, and so on. I thought, wow, this guy's in my head.
I think right after that, somewhere he says, the fact is that change is the very nature of life.
Mm.
A long time ago, I realized that was one truth that I couldn't get away from. The only thing I can really, really count on, as I think about it, in the outside in world, is change.
Mm.
It's interesting, like kind of combining what you both said. It's like we try to prevent change to be safe, but in a way, change is what actually ensures safety.
Mm.
Like if we imagine if the world did not change over time the way it has, because change is part of evolution, and if change doesn't happen, nothing evolves. But to that part that's afraid, it just can't see that. It just wouldn't hear of it. Because how often have we resisted doing something because of fear, but then for some reason we end up doing it's like the best thing that ever turned out to be.
Yeah.
It's the thing that's occurring to me is it's like, I'll call it a divine sense of humor that it's like create this species who is predisposed to fight its nature. Or, like the idea that change is the nature of life. Like it's so natural. There's some irony in the fact that we have a predisposition almost, it seems, to resist our own nature or the nature of life, and the path to personal growth and development and enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, is getting over that and just falling into accepting, going with the natural way of things versus trying to control them and manipulate them.
See, if it wasn't for our stuff, we wouldn't resist it, would we?
Mm. Yeah, which goes back to it's when Singer explains in the previous chapter about how it is that we go about collecting our stuff, it's a we're balking the system. Like the system isn't working correctly. We're interfering. We're pushing things down, or we're clinging to things and creating those blockages. But the system's the optimal way for the system to operate is to just let things flow. But
Go with the flow.
the fact that it doesn't, that we interfere with that with our free will. And maybe that's might be an overreach, because most of it I think is unintentional.
Yeah.
Where when you say free will, it implies intent, I think, at least for me. So like we don't come with a user manual when we're babies that say, don't worry about that, just let it flow.
Well, as babies, we do let it
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
And somehow that gets conditioned out of us.
Yeah.
Maybe not in everybody, but in most people, at least in my society.
It occurs to me that the same flow of the universe, life, like that energy that is the universe and life, like that's the same energy that's actually running through us. Like Singer talks about, the heart is that source of that infinite power, kind of using my own words. So if it's just that same power that's running the universe, I think when our hearts are open, we're in sync with the flow of the universe or life. And you know how everything just goes according to like this beautiful flow, things fall into place, coincidences and so on and so forth. And the time that, the stuff comes up and I don't want to feel it, heart chakra is closed and now completely out of sync.
It's funny when you just mentioned flow, what occurred to me was, previously my interpretation of being in flow is everything's going the way I want it to go. But now I'm seeing it more as, no, when you're in flow, everything's just going and you don't care whether it's like you don't have a predetermined map of how it should be. You're just accepting it as it is.
Yeah.
That's, you're letting go of any you don't have anything to match up or compare what's going on with. It's just, you're just in the moment, accepting it as it comes.
This kind of links to something that piqued my curiosity was I'm not going to mention the page because I'm using Kindle here. We define the entire scope of our outer experience based upon our inner problems. If you want to grow spiritually, you have to change that. For some weird reason, what I heard was that the outside is actually spiritual. And I think the reason why that occurred to me was whenever I have been out of my, say, ego or my conditioned mind, I remember how I've seen the world where everything just lights up. Whether it's like a tree or a bush or a garden or like even just a concrete pavement, everything just looks bright because I'm just out of that conditioned self. And so to me, like when I'm not seeing the world through my inner problems, if you're just using Singer's words, I see the spirituality, I see the life force that's alive out there. And I was just, as I read that paragraph, what occurred to me was like, wow, like if only I was, the more I could begin to trust this, that outside is spiritual. And when I'm out of my own head, I connect with the spirituality in me and the two can really sync and collaborate. Well, you don't have to collaborate. It's the one thing that's flowing through you and outside of you. But the thing that just stood out for me is outside is actually spiritual, but 99.999% of the time, I don't see it that way. I don't see outside as spiritual.
Yeah.
I see it's a physical thing that I got to battle with.
It's interesting because it depends on your perspective.
100%.
So yeah, I see how it could be outside
Mm.
or inside or even somewhere else, but it's all in your perspective, where you're looking from, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I was relating a lot of this to Jamie Smart's metaphor of wearing the colored goggles or glasses. And it's like when you're looking at life through layers of your stuff, you're not to your words, Sanka, of seeing the spirituality of it. You're seeing it through layers of, in this chapter, I think he uses the word darkness and stuff. Like it's all through all your stuff. So you're not seeing it as pure or what it is. You're seeing it distorted. And when you get rid of your stuff and you're in this state of clarity, then you see it clearly, and you see the oneness of it, I guess.
When I was in Africa, we did this exercise where we did a meditation, the idea of which was let go of absolutely everything, everybody that you know. Let it go. And so we spent, I don't know, 20 minutes going through this meditation to get us to this place. And then we opened our eyes and went for a walk in the gardens. And just like you said, Asanka, everything was shining. All the plants, all the trees. It was such an amazing experience to look at the world as it is, without any preconceived notions at all.
Mm.
Sounds like to use a computer metaphor, you cleared your cache. So you're not looking at the world through your cookies.
Who's the geek?
Yeah. Guilty.
See, in that mode or in that space, the world become a gift
Mm-hmm.
for us to express our love to,
Mm.
versus a place where we can use to feel better. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
using the world to, make things better, or like I can avoid my samskaras using singers, like it's just become this beautiful perfection in its imperfection. When I say imperfections, like in its wildness, it just becomes a gift. It's like having that someone or something to love, like that is beautiful,
Mm.
other than, whereas when we're in that human space, it's like, how can this help me, benefit me, make me feel better? um they
I
say.
remember there was a really, it was, the world was very interesting, and I was so curious to see what was in it,
Mm.
you know.
Mm,
Curiosity was a big part of it.
yeah.
What's around the corner?
Curiosity is part of love, right? Like it's part
Mm.
of fine. It's like when you're curious, you're not in your head. Like,
Mm.
like you're completely open.
Well, on page 113 in my book, it relates to this. It says, we think we're supposed to figure out how life should be and then make it that way.
Mm.
Only someone who looks deeper and questions why we need the events of life to be a particular way will question this assumption. How did we come up with the notion that life is not okay just the way it is, or that we won't be okay the way it will be? Who said that the way life naturally unfolds is not at all right? The answer is fear says so. But this made me think of like my parenting. So like, I thought part of my role as a parent was to teach my kids how life was supposed to be. Here's the things you need to do. Here's the ways you need to react to these situations. Here's what you need to be thinking about in terms of, I don't know, respecting other people, or being um, an upstanding citizen or contributing to society kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know, when I think back on it now, I was like, wow, I was really laying it on thick there, or like um, doing a disservice. Like I was all in and leaning in on this idea of the way to live a successful life is by um, planning and executing those plans and predicting what's going to happen and being prepared for all eventualities and things. And I don't know, I see it playing out more so with my daughter than my son, but it's like, wow, I really botched that up.
Do you think there were moments where you were completely in that space of love
Mm.
where you didn't do that and you did something different?
I'm sure there were.
Yeah.
I mean, what occurs to me is all the moments that were the most special and the most filled with love and where we were the most present together, me and my kids. Those were the moments when I wasn't in my head thinking about any of that stuff.
Yeah. And I'm sure they've had a massively lasting impression
Yeah,
on them.
yeah.
But
I also realize I've um, been overly critical of my own parents in terms of a misunderstanding of what all their shortcomings were in terms of their inability to manage money properly or to give me the things I think I deserved as a child.
Mm.
And all that stuff. It's interesting. I think I've mentioned this to both of you in the past. Like the since we started reading this book, all kinds of stuff has been occurring to me both when I'm awake and dreaming.
um,
And that's why I mentioned this stuff about like a critical analysis of my parents kind of thing. Like I'm things are coming to the surface and I'm just able to kind of acknowledge them and kind of let them go, send them on their way kind of feeling versus like I realized, you know, there's areas where I had resentment or I don't know, some scars about various aspects of my life. Things I hadn't thought about in some cases 30, 40 years. And all of a sudden, since reading this book, I'm like, those memories are kind of surfacing and then leaving on their way. So kind of interesting.
I wonder, using Michael Singer's explanation about, how when we see trees, I mean, I think this is a couple of chapters before,
Yeah.
we're driving, we see trees, we're just letting them pass through. We're not holding on to them. And I was reflecting when you're talking about our parents, like we hold on to those painful memories a lot more than those happier memories.
Mhm.
And what occurs to me is when we experience those happiness moments, we don't hold on to the happiness.
Mhm.
It's always passing through us, and it's probably why all those happy moments are quite short-lived in a way,
Mhm.
because they're going through. But those painful experiences, we like resisting and holding on to them, so it's just more prolonged. And of course, they're the ones we remember as well.
Yeah.
If only we could, be the same way with painful experiences,
Yeah.
just as we were. But I guess the more we realize how all of this functions, using his Singer's words, the more spiritual you get, you're a
Mm.
lot more open to.
Yeah.
Um, isn't it weird, like to say, more spiritual you get? I guess it's not that you're getting more spiritual; you're just realizing your spiritual nature more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're getting more spiritual. You're just getting uh, whatever the opposite is, less. Uh, you're suppressing it less. It's like subtractive versus additive.
Mm.
Like because your nature is spiritual.
So the sentence that I highlighted them, as the best sentence in this chapter was, there is no such thing. There is such a thing as life without fear.
Mm.
There is such a thing as life
Mm.
without fear.
So
which is,
I've heard,
it's amazing to think about.
yeah. So going with that, there is like, say that again, please, Vanessa.
There is such a thing as life without fear.
Yeah. So what occurs to me is life without fear is life with love.
Mm.
Yes.
Because I think I've heard somewhere the opposite of love is fear, or the opposite of fear is love.
Mm.
And it does feel tangible that there can be a life with love.
Yeah.
It's weird, to imagine that it is possible to have life without fear. Like that feels odd. But when I say it's like having life with love, well, that feels possible.
Yeah.
I don't know why in my mind, in my brain, it's the same thing, but said it in one way, it feels impossible. But said in another way, oh yeah, that's possible. I guess when you're in love, or when you're in the feeling of love, fear is not there.
Mm.
In my younger days, I was a skateboarder, and I'm pretty sure I used to have stickers on my skateboard that said "No fear," and because we would do some risky stuff, trying to do different trick. And don't get me wrong, I was not an accomplished skateboarder by any means, but um, I broke my ankle trying stupid ramp tricks, and I mean, you do things under the premise of. So I know I've had moments in my life of no fear. Um, and even today, like there's areas in my life where a lot of my life now, actually, I feel like I'm living with no fear. Um, doing this program is one example, like recording ourselves talking about deeply spiritual stuff and then posting it on the internet for the world to watch, even though it's usually like 5 or 10 people, but still, it's
We have that many?
yeah, some weeks. Um, Yeah, the very first sentence in that chat in that paragraph, Vanessa, where that line came from, he says, "The alternative is to decide not to fight with life. You realize and accept that life is not under your control." And to that, I think it lines up nicely with what you talked about in terms of your meditation you did. And
Mm.
it's like the idea of just letting go of everything and then just welcoming life as it unfolds.
But how do I say this? Welcoming life as it unfolds. I think it's the same. I think when you welcome life as it unfolds, it just flows through you.
Mm.
Mm.
If in the same way, if we didn't fear the fear, if we welcome the fear as it unfolds, it's no different to being present with fear.
Mm.
And then I don't think fear would hang around that long in that space. Because for fear to persist, you have to resist it, right?
And I think that's what's happening when you release the samskaras. You're just
Mm.
being present with it and not pushing it back down
Mm.
to avoid it.
So if it wasn't for the samskaras, the fear wouldn't be there because they're
Right.
right. Okay. Mm.
At the bottom of that same page, it says, "Fear is the cause of every problem.
Mm.
It's the root of all prejudices and the negative emotions of anger, jealousy, and possessiveness. If you had no fear, you could be perfectly happy living in this world. Nothing would bother you. You'd be willing to face everything and everyone because you wouldn't have the fear inside of you that could cause you a disturbance." That sounds pretty good.
Mm.
I had an experience, I probably talked about it on one of these programs before, when I was in London. And Ollie invited me to his house for the first day of the program that was on thing. And I just arrived in London. I was jet lagged, whatever. And he invited me, and I said, my immediate response was, I don't know, let me think about it, and I'll go into the store. I'll call you in half an hour or something. And I was walking, contemplating, should I go? And I'm like, every reason I could come up with why not to go. I'm tired. I don't know the train system here. What if I get lost, or I don't know where I'm going? What food is he going to serve me? What if we meet in person and our friendship is destroyed? All kinds of crazy thoughts. And again, all of them just boiled down to fear. So I basically said, all these reasons I've just rhymed off. It all comes down, they're all the same. It's the only reason not to go is because of fear. And in that moment, I decided, F fear. I'm not giving into it today. So I messaged him back and said, just send me the address or the train that I need to take, and I'll be there. And I ended up getting lost. I ended up at Heathrow Terminal 5 and on the wrong train and all kinds of nonsense. But it also didn't bother me. It was more of the adventure of it and letting it flow, and just, who cares if I'm 10 minutes late or if I'm on the wrong train? I'm in London. It's like, this is fun.
Wonder if when we are on a track of anything positive, we're actually going towards a love. And when we're in the track of anything negative, we actually, if it is actually fear, I wonder if it is really simple as that. It's either you're going towards love or running away from it, meaning towards fear.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it feels right, but my head's going, that's too simple. It can't be right.
But every time I have an insight or see something more clearly, it's simpler.
Yeah. It's to me, it's the opposite of a red flag. It's like it's a green flag, I guess. When something seems too simple, you're probably onto something.
Yeah,
that's a good indicator.
He says that if you truly want to grow spiritually, i.e., I guess, connect with the outer self, you'll realize that keeping your stuff is keeping you trapped. What I heard is keeping your stuff is keeping the fear trapped inside of you.
Another thing he says is, be wise enough to realize you don't want that stuff inside of you. Unfortunately, most of us are not that wise. We are not trying to be free of our stuff. We're trying to justify it. Yeah, but he did this to me and I was right and blah, 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 blah. That kind of thing. It's just, I need to hang on to that for some reason.
Yeah.
Keeping my stuff.
So I was reading this last night, and so it's the fall here in Canada. All the leaves have fallen off the trees. And in our neighborhood, even though I don't think it's a bylaw, but people rake up their leaves and put them in these recyclable bags, and the garbage truck comes and picks them up and takes them away. But there's this one guy down the street who he just uses his leaf blower and blows all his leaves into the road. And then the wind blow. Basically, his leaves become everyone else's problem. And it's one of those things that every time I walk my dog past his house, I get angry. I'm like, because it's, that's not the way you're supposed to live. That's not how society works. That's a violation of, being a courteous neighbor, all this kind of stuff. And when I was reading this last night, I was like, oh yeah, like, look at that. It was just fascinating for me to be observing myself, getting caught up in that and having plans for like, well, I'm gonna send him a letter. I'm gonna create a letter that looks like it's from the city so that it looks official. And then I thought, oh, I'm gonna make a comic strip that's like, this is this is Tom. He's a good neighbor. He breaks up his leaves. This is Dick. He's a bad neighbor. He blows his leaves in the street. Don't be a dick. I had all these like plans. And then as I was reading this last night, it was just like, just let it go. Like,
Mm.
I don't need to give any energy, any time. Um, anyway, and there was quite a bit of resistance, but in the end, I feel like I did let it go. Um, yeah, so it's interesting just how these I don't know, and I feel like too like life gives us these little tests. Um,
What helped you let it go?
I think reading through this chapter and realizing that um, it wasn't helpful, it wasn't serving me. Um, it's none of my business. Um, it doesn't matter. It's not worth it. Like the price I'm paying for being aggravated by that isn't like it's not worth the cost.
Mm.
Mm.
It sounds like it's a different mindset to the mindset you are in when you're going to do the comic strip and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that the mindset I was in when I was thinking of all those things was the um, I need to control life, or um, I have a set of rules that should be adhered to universally by everyone in this neighborhood, and it's up to me to find those that aren't following those rules and let them know about it. Um,
So that's the judge.
yeah, yeah, that's that mindset.
And yeah, I'm just thinking about the words that we use like mindset. It's like, okay, that's the orientation, that's the
Perspective.
perspective, yeah, the view, and
Well, the realization reading through this is like when I see that, it's activating my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got stuff about following rules or being respectful or being a good neighbor, or I don't know, whatever it is. Um, it's funny, the memory that's coming up is I remember as a little kid. So based on where this was, I might have been in like grade one, so whatever that is, 6 or 7 years old. And there's a variety store, convenience store down the street. And we would go buy chocolate bars and gum and licorice, whatever. And I think it was my brother and I came out of the store and I ate something. I threw my wrapper on the ground, and an adult was walking down the sidewalk, and he yelled at me and basically lectured me about littering and this whole societal agreement about respecting. I mean, back then it wasn't even the environment; it was just put your trash in the garbage in the bin. Like, don't just throw your garbage everywhere to make it somebody else's problem. Because like that's the origin of this stuff. And whether it was um, uh, the way I felt being yelled at by a random grown up, the fear, the shame, the embarrassment. Um, I mean, I don't know. I was a little kid. I guess I didn't know better. Like I got to assume I wasn't um, doing it to be spiteful or, deliberate. It was just like, I don't know, here's garbage, just throw it, just release it. I don't know. Um, anyway, but yeah, it's like, I mean, this is just one example of like seeing, it's almost like I can see like these connected dots to what's going on in my life today that's activating all this history of stuff that I've stored. I don't know. Am I the only one that Do you guys have experiences like that? I'm curious.
I think of it as I have invited all these stored disturbances to be released. And they've been coming up like crazy.
Mm,
And I don't even look at them anymore. It's, oh, that's a rumble strip. Just let it go. I don't even try and figure out where it's from or what
yeah.
it's about. I just work on the intention of letting it go
Mm.
is where I put myself. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, with you too. There are things that come up where the more I open myself up to it, the very feeling that either I couldn't or I refused to feel back then get felt and it goes through. But there are other things I'm just not ready to feel yet. Then it just goes back down to the storage and then come back, tomorrow or a couple of weeks later going, okay, let's try again. So, but no, I really do, because I used to think you have to process everything, find whatever. But the more you understand how it works, it becomes much, much more organic and natural. Some things you do have to, well, I do have to, they just is still a little bit more real. Yeah.
What does letting go mean for both of you? Like he says let go, and it's like, yeah, I need to let go. And then I think to myself, what does that even mean?
It's a good question. For me, it's just an opening. In my body, it's an opening, and I refuse to tighten. I don't know if that makes sense, especially in my heart area. And also the intention. Just let it go. I don't want to carry that stuff around anymore. It's not the world I want to live in, a world of judgment and disturbance and anger and whatever, fear. I don't want to live in that world anymore. I'm done with it. That's very clear to me. So it's just what he says, stay open as this stuff comes up. And like I said, I don't even look at it anymore. It's like, oh, I don't know what that is. Don't need it. I'm sure I don't need it. Let it go.
Yeah, for me, the direction or the intention is to become present to the moment or become more into clarity in the moment. Because to me, like when I'm, caught up or tense or tight or upset or whatever, I'm not seeing reality clearly and I'm not present. I'm caught up in some scar or some stuff. So it's about how can I see this more clearly? How can I come to the more present? And with that intention, what I need to do in the moment to let go or release this, comes up. And that might be go for a walk. Another time might be just take a pause and be with it. Another time might be, I don't know, whatever. Like, it's not a prescription, because if it becomes a prescription, then it becomes another doing thing.
Yeah.
But just holding that intention, like, becoming more grounded, clear, etc. That helps to,
I've just
And the
seen
same.
this. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask what it is for you, but go ahead. What
Well,
you
I've just
said.
seen something about a distinction between being in control and out of control. And that previously I had thought about being out of control as being something to avoid, like as a bad thing. Like I feel out of control, like it's unsettling. It's, you know, I want to be in control. And letting go is, I'm now seeing it as like, no, you letting go is not being in control.
Well, it's even more than that. It's not needing control.
Yeah.
What I just heard when you shared that, Greg, is control is well, to me, it seems like it's a function of the ego. So when you're out of control, it's like you're no longer in the ego, but the ego, when it gets back in, you
Yeah.
get the control back in,
Yeah.
get back in. So it's like, I think you were saying when you're out of control, it's like letting go. So out of control, you're outside the ego, letting go. So I wonder, letting go is a function or a process that happens when you're actually not
Mm.
in the ego, when you're not caught up in it. Because if you're trying to let go and do it, then again, you're back in the ego. You're
Yeah.
trying to do something, right?
Well, yeah, for me, letting go is letting go of the whole idea of controlling things, needing to control, needing to not be out of
Yeah.
control, just letting things be. The
Mhm.
Beatles song "Let It Be" is coming to mind. Just let
Let
it
it
be.
be.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like the areas or things that, my mind, naturally wants to control. I'm like, oh, that's like a tell. That's when I'm in the
Mm,
condition itself. That's when I'm in the, even go, look, I don't want to go there because things are not in my control.
yeah,
Things aren't in my ego, or in that situation, I'm exposing my stuff to be disturbed and touched.
yeah.
Um, hmm.
It's funny this weekend. So my birthday was the end of October, and this weekend my wife's family came over to celebrate. And this birthday, on my actual birthday, my kids couldn't be here because they're away at university. So we did a FaceTime call. And then this weekend, I drove to the university to get my son to bring him to be here to see all the family. But my good daughter couldn't come for whatever reason. Um, and previously, it would have really bothered me because it would have been, uh, I would have, I would have assigned a whole bunch of meaning to her absence, right?
Mm.
And um, you know, previously my view would have been, um, if you can't show up for an important family function, it's because it's disrespectful. Uh, you didn't exercise proper time management to book it off work or to plan your life around being at that event, which is an indication that it's not important to you, which means you don't love me. Blah 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 blah, like all this nonsense. And instead, it was just like, oh, she couldn't make it. Well, that's fine. Like, um, we had a great time with the people that did make it, and um, I talked to her on the phone, and it was just accepting the weekend as it unfolded, with nothing on the way it should be, and no judgment about um, how it unfolded. So anyway,
So for how you say would have responded many years ago
yeah.
to
Well,
how you
very not maybe not even that long ago,
not
like
that
a
long
week
ago,
ago.
a week ago, to the way how you responded, like what have you seen, or like what has
Yeah.
allowed you to have that kind of
Well,
a
letting go, seeing that all those stories I would make up about what it meant, um, how it would have activated my stuff. So I think some of my stuff is gone, so
okay.
it's not there to get activated. Um, and it's funny. There's a quote that's coming to my mind in this project I'm working on for a Happy Hockey Dad thing. Was um, uh, what is it? Being angry for 1 minute costs you 60 seconds of happiness, something like that. So it's, you can choose, like, you can either be angry or you can be happy. Like, you can't be both at the same time. So for every minute you're angry, that's a minute or 60 seconds of happiness you're foregoing. Is it worth it? Like, is it, like, in the instance of this weekend, like, would it have been great if my daughter was here? Sure. But like, do I want to just, do I want to enjoy the weekend with the people that are here? Or do I want to dwell on and ruin it, dwelling on who isn't here?
Mm.
Um, and it's kind of like, do I want to live in la la land or do I want to live in reality?
Mm.
So being present and enjoying the moment. So it's kind of this. mean, that quote is one of the things I've taken away from it is this choosing between being angry or being happy. Fear, what we've just talked about this morning, fear or love, and making better choices.
How do you want your world to be? It's up
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
What you focus on.
I think oftentimes we as human beings don't know that we have that choice. So,
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
It really looks like it's out of our control what comes up. It's done to us from the outside world. It's not our, thinking. It's like, but at some point, when we do have the realization, oh, there is actually a choice. So, yeah, it is a game changer.
I had a coaching conversation not long ago with someone that was so stuck. She's a trauma survivor, and the trauma in her life, she just couldn't let go of it. And we finally got to a point where she said, "Oh, I never knew I had a choice, that I don't have to continue to live like this." And that was amazing. That was an amazing moment. There are definitely people that don't understand about choice in this way. And we are fortunate that we do understand it on some level.
Yeah. And it's not being better in understanding. It's just that, I don't know, it's not that people who doesn't understand are any less or not. It's just the journey that we all go through, right? Because all of my life I didn't know there was a choice. But then when you have those glimpses going, oh, did not know that was the case. That did not know this is how it works. So
yeah.
then there are moments it feels like I don't have a choice.
There are still times exactly that happens to me. I don't have a choice.
Maybe we'll wrap up. I'll just read the last part of this chapter. It says, "You either let go or you don't. There really isn't anything in between. So let all of your blockages and disturbance become the fuel for the journey. That which is holding you down can become a powerful force that raises you up. You just have to be willing to take the ascent."
I love that. That force that holds it down can be a powerful. What you said, I'm forgetting the word.
Fuel for the journey.
Yeah, it's like the force you're using to suppress them can be the power that can actually help you lift up. That's awesome.
And next week we'll do chapter 9, which I'm looking forward to, removing your inner thorn. Thanks, guys.